This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Mettle Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle Podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle Podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and my guest today is Coach Brad Soderberg. And Brad is currently the director of scouting for Virginia basketball. Is that right, Coach?
That's correct. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. And one of the things I don't know that I want to say I'm a student of the game, but I love one of my favorite things about basketball is how you can track lineage and you can track family trees and like who coached with who. And when I was coaching in high school and junior high, I had a coach I worked under. And we taught the pack line defense. And then as I'm following this, and then I know you, I hooked up with you because I know your son, Kramer Soderberg, who's the head coach at Millikan, where I went, where my son's going to play. And when he hooked me up with you, I'm like, man, this is you played for Dick Bennett, who's like, he made the pack line defense. He made it what it was. He popularized it. And then now you're coaching at Virginia, who is like, they are the pack line defense, right? That's their thing. And you're playing for Dick's son, Tony. And so for me, that whole idea, that lineage and that connection, I don't know. It's a weird thing to be geeking out about, but I think, talking to somebody who had a firsthand knowledge and the growth of the pack line defense and just the uses of it and things like that. It's a really cool. I think it's cool that you're here. I appreciate you coming on.
No, I'm glad to be here. I could talk about the pack for 5 hours. I mean, you described it very well. I've been around the pack defense through Dick Bennett, and then on my own as a head coach for many years, and now I'm with Tony at Virginia, and we've implemented the pack as best we can, and our defense isn't our problem most nights. It's our offense that causes us issues. So, the pack has been good to us.
No, I know. And that's the thing about, but that's your focus, right? You're really, and I think that's one of the things you have to be really good at your focus, and your focus is defense. Yeah. And you're good at defense and you're good at the pack line, and you have to figure the other stuff out as you go. And some days that falters. Yeah.
Ironically, we won the national championship in 2019. In the last 5 years, we haven't gone beyond the first round, and a lot of that, we get criticized for our offense, but I contend that Tony is a tremendous offensive coach, provided that we surround him with the offensive weapons that we need, and that has fallen a little. And when that happens, because we defend so well, games are typically low scoring, not because we want it to be low scoring, but we make it hard for our opponent to get a good shot. So there's just less possessions in the games we play by design.
Well, I think that's part of it is your focus is the pack line. You want less shots, you want less possessions, I mean, you're trying to slow the game down on purpose, but then it does work against your own offensive flow a little bit.
Well, I wouldn't say we're trying to slow it down on purpose, but the thing, if you ever watch us play closely, the thing that, in my opinion, makes us different offensively is that we refuse to take a bad shot. A lot of teams, and some kids don't like that. They want, they want to be able to shoot the shots that they want, even if they may not be a high percentage shot. Well, we really demand that our guys take a high percentage shot. Now, if it comes after one pass, no problem. But if you play a good team defensively, you're not going to get a good shot after one pass.
No. Then yeah, if that's the type of team you're playing, you don't need to worry about your defense too much either.
Exactly. But it's been a good formula for it's proven the test of time, and we're going to continue to play it as best we can.
Yeah. So take me back to your early days of playing. So you played under Dick Bennett. I mean, was it when you went into college? You're playing under Dick, who ended up going to Wisconsin later. Was it pack line from day one?
Absolutely not. Guess what? When I played for Coach Bennett, we were at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, just like Millikan, a Division III school.
Division III, yep.
And we had, relative to Division III, a very talented team. As a matter of fact, as the future would show, that we had two NBA draft choices off the team that I played with my senior year. Terry Porter played 16 years in the NBA with the Portland Trailblazers and the Timberwolves. And then we had another kid who was a freshman my senior year who got drafted by the Bucks. So relative to Division III, we had a lot of talent, and we used what we called the push defense, where we would not allow the ball to go back to the middle. We forced it to the baseline. We full front the post. We, not without getting into too many X's and O's, we deny reversal and so on. We tried to force the pace a little bit because, and this is where I thought the brilliance of Dick Bennett, where he thought we didn't need to slow the game. We didn't need to make it a low possession game. We wanted the game to speed up. When I coached with him at Wisconsin many years later, it was a different story. We didn't have the talent at Wisconsin when we first got there to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Indianas and the Michigans and the Illinois and Michigan States and so on. So he devised the pack defense, and the rest is history.
Well, and then at what point do you because once he got better at Wisconsin, it's not like you must have recruited the type of kids because you kept that, right? Because eventually you could compete with the Indianas, the Illinois, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's one of those things where we got to a Final Four in 2000, and then at that point you say, well, now that we've gotten to a Final Four, we can get better talent, but you dance with the woman you took to the dance. We can't all of a sudden throw the pack line out. It's what got us where we were, and so I don't know. It's a catch-22, I guess.
Yeah, it is. But then at what point? So, and now that you're the director of scouting, and you're talking about Wisconsin, how you could have changed at that point, but you didn't. How do you determine what type of player is going to make a good pack line player?
No, it's not about that. We actually try to recruit the best scorers that we can get, because in our opinion, it's a lot easier to get a kid to defend at a high level than to get him to score at a high level. Like the old adage that we use is, if a young man doesn't want to defend, we can, usually learn the lesson of the bench. But if a kid can't score, you can put him on the bench all you want, but he ain't going to score. So we try to recruit the scoring and teach the defense.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense to me. But at what point? I feel like there has to be some mentality in there. There has to be kids that are athletically gifted and scorers that you're like, I don't know that we can get them to play defense.
No, I disagree. I think a lot of times kids who don't defend, they weren't demanded to defend by their coaches when they were younger, and that's not their fault, nor is it the coach's fault. I mean, there's a lot of ways to win a game of basketball, but we just find that kids understand that if they want to play at the highest level, the NBA, though the NBA is not known for defense, you can't just be a sieve. And so
no,
we try to convince kids that we can help you you're already a good offensive player. We can help you get where you want to get because you need to add the defense. So I guess it's just it's a matter of perspective on that.
Oh, well, then that's even a better way for me to take this discussion is you get kids that come in that are scorers and think basketball is about scoring and they're gifted scorers, and you have to convince them to play defense, which is a lot of mentality. What's day one? How do you start that transformation?
Well, I think the main thing is that our defensive system is very simple. And it's not, I think that's the first part of it. It's not like we've got, 8 different coverages on a side ball screen, and here's what we're going to do. And, we're going to play zone and this 5% of the time and press and all. We do one thing, we're kind of the Midas muffler thing. We run the pack, and it's not hard. And, you just have to get good at it. And I think the other thing that's unique about it is truly a team defense. A guy can come in and he may not be lightning quick laterally, but he knows he's got a partner on his right and left all the time. And we don't play lip service to the unity piece and the team bonding piece, because it literally has a bearing on our defense. And I think a lot of guys, a great example, we had a kid named Ty Jerome who was our point guard in the national championship team. And I would have never thought that he would be an NBA player because his lateral quickness wasn't all that. But in our system, he became a very fine defender because he knew that he had to help in the gap to his right and left, and it wasn't his responsibility alone to stop the ball. And I think that's one of the beauties of sport is, it's a team deal.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the cool things about the pack line as we talk about that. Yes, it's a man-to-man defense, but it's I don't want to say like it's a cross between a man and a zone, but there's definitely principles there.
No, it's okay to say it that way. As a matter of fact, when I would listen to Dick Bennett speak at coaches clinics, he said that when he designed this defense, he wanted the best of the zone and the man-to-man. He said he didn't want a defense that didn't have ball pressure, but he also didn't want a defense where one man was responsible for one man. And that's exactly what the zone does. The zone, everybody helps on the ball, but unlike the zone, we have pressure on the ball. So he
right.
kind of tried to mesh the two. So I think that's a good combination.
No, I think when I was coaching it, one of my favorite things about it was, when you guys step on the floor at Virginia, everybody knows what defense you're playing. There's no, you know what I mean? They know what's coming. But one of my favorite parts whenever we were coaching it is we would run the pack line, and we would have, when the other team, the coach, maybe they didn't scout, they didn't pay attention, or they watched some film, or they just weren't really picking up on it. And they would have the ball, their point would come down, and they would call out their zone offense. And they would, just because they would think we were in a zone defense.
Right.
And the head coach and myself would look at each other, and they're like, now we know we got them. Right.
We got them.
And it was usually it was indicative of the fact that they didn't move well on their, it means if you're playing your man offense and it looks like a zone defense, it's because you're not moving very well.
Right,
and
exactly.
It was just a great thing we would smile, and we're like, we're not going to let them know. Right. Our head coach, he would get interviewed about it, and he was like, you guys play that great solid 2-3 defense. And he would just smile and say, yeah, we do it well. And let him know. Yeah. Oh yeah, work. So I love that idea. So whenever you're developing that ability to play that pack line defense, what is more important? Is it the physical ability, or is it the mental ability on playing that type of defense?
Well, clearly at our level, there has to be a physical component. I mean, we can't play the Dukes and the Carolinas and go right on down the list, and then our non-conference schedule is equally difficult. You can't play that well without legitimate athleticism. However, I think that one of the things that's really been enlightening to me over the years working with the Bennetts is the mere fact that we understand that we're not going to out-recruit the Dukes of the world and the Carolinas of the world takes a bit of humility. And we share that with our players. You know, fellas, Duke's going to have 6 or 7 5-star athletes on their roster every year. And quite frankly, you're not that. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you're less of an athlete. But we have to play a different way. I've said at many coaches' clinics, the pack defense isn't for every program. If you've got stallions on your team relative to the schedule you're going to play, then you shouldn't be packing. You should press full court, make them miserable, and make them turn it over as much as possible. But if you can accept the fact that maybe our lineup isn't going to be as potent as Duke's, but it's still our responsibility to try to beat them, then we have to do what's best for us. And so I think yes, the athleticism, you have to have size and length, and shot blockers help, and quickness on the ball helps. But on the other hand, if you're a selfish defender, which is a term we use, most of the time, if you talk about a selfish basketball player, you're talking about what he shoots at every time he touches it. Well, You can be a selfish defender where, hey, I got mine. I ain't going to look bad. That doesn't fly with us. If a guy doesn't get beat off the dribble and the guy in the next gap doesn't help, that's a reason for coming out of the game. So I think it's a clear blend of both athleticism and then the willingness to be a helpful teammate.
Yeah, I think that's for regardless of what Division I program, like it has to be, the athleticism has to be there.
No
I think
question.
It's just no question, right? And it's like there's a lot of kids, and I work with a lot of athletes, and they want to be D1, and it's like and you can have D1 work ethic, and you have D1 skills, but you have to have D1 genetic gifts. It has to be there.
Yeah, I played Division III basketball, and I worked extremely hard just to be a starter on my Division III team. And now that I've worked with Division I athletes for half of my career, they're not working any harder than I did, or that your son will when he plays at Division III. The difference is, in my case, I was a step slow and 2 inches short or 3 inches short or whatever. So instead of being a 5'10" guard at a Division III, you're getting a 6'2" point guard who's got longer arm. I mean, it was a God-given thing more than anything for those guys.
Oh, I felt the same way. I went to Millikan, and I was, I'd come from a small school, and I was a 6'4" center, right? And then you get in there, and it's like, and it was like I wasn't big enough to get it done inside, and I wasn't skilled enough to do it outside. And it's like, and so you would have to. There are limitations, and I think that's okay, though. I don't think it's more than okay. I love that
because I coached at all 3 levels, both as a head and an assistant. I always would tell young men, the game is meant to be played. If you're a Division III athlete, you can probably become a walk-on or something at a big Division I school, but in the end, you're not going to play as much, and there's no fun in that. So find the level where you can play, and it's that simple.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I don't know what the word is. I don't know if amazed is the right word, but there are a lot of guys that, you have them on your team at Virginia who are on the team who are really good, and they have some of the genetic gifts, but aren't going to see the floor much for several years. And that definitely takes a special kind of mentality to want to do that. I think it's less now with the portal. People move around a little bit more, but still I don't know. I honestly don't know how to feel about those guys and gals that do that, because I'm with you. I want to go play somewhere. Right.
Right. No, exactly. And I think sometimes there's such an overemphasis for kids in all sports to become Division I athletes, understandably so, because, the arenas are bigger and the crowds are bigger. But in the end, if you're sitting on the bench, the glamour of the crowd and the big arenas goes away in a hurry.
Yeah. No, and God bless them, the ones that want to do it, because you got to have them, right?
Yeah,
you have to have them for practice players, but I'm with you. When you're talking about that pack line defense and some of the things about you're not recruiting as many 5-star guys as Duke and the Carolinas and stuff like that, that's an element of humility, right? That you have to have in your players. That is, I think humility is phenomenally useful in all aspects of life, but how do you put humility? I mean, you're still talking about guys that are getting recruited to go play Division I at a team that has won a national championship. Humility may not be real high on their list of attributes early on. How do you foster that?
Well, I give Tony Bennett, and he learned our foundational principles that we use. He learned them from his father, but I give Tony credit because he spends this will sound like an overstatement, but he spends as much time instructing and promoting our foundational principles, the first of which is humility, as much as he does catching and passing and defending and rebounding. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of time we spend in a film room with maybe a story about humility or an example where he'll take something off of 30 for 30 or something and have our video guy present it to the team. And then afterwards say, now, do you understand why I showed you this? Here's a guy who is an Olympian, but the humility with which he goes about his day and the humility with which he accepts congratulations and accolades and so on is a foundational principle for us. And again, it's not like we're perfect or anything, but I think there's some really life lessons to be learned by going through a career under the tutelage of Coach Bennett, because you literally come away with things that are valuable when you become a dad or when you become a teacher or whatever, that go well beyond whether you can shoot the three or full court press. So it's just it's a healthy environment.
No amount of athletic talent or physical ability can overcome a poor mindset. Anxiety, fear, and negativity will always diminish an athlete's abilities and limit their success. If you're not intentionally developing your child's mental toughness, then they are not reaching their full potential. Mental Mettle Coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete.
I mean, yeah. And you're speaking my language here, because when I talk about athletics, I mean, way too often the youth look at athletics as like they just want to go play D1 and everybody wants to go to the NBA. And we know what such a small percentage doing that.
Right.
To me, athletics is athletics in youth is this, it's controlled adversity, right? So it gives kids an opportunity to face adversity without it being life or death.
Exactly.
Without these things. And if you can learn to adopt some of these principles, facing that adversity in athletics, you're going to be better prepared for life. The problem is if we don't do that, right?
Yeah.
If a coach isn't teaching those things, then a kid is not preparing for life. They're just preparing for wins and losses, and they think everything is about that.
Yeah. I contend that even with poor coaching and even with guys or women who don't do it right, there's great value in sport because it promotes a word that I've invented. It's not in Webster, called grindability. I think anybody who's successful, you in the case of having a podcast that you're trying to, share information with people, or a banker or a student, the ones who can grind. And what I mean by grind is on a day-to-day basis, they can do the mundane things without losing energy, without losing a gusto for whatever they're doing. I'm at my mother's house right now visiting her, and a couple of my nephews are high school guys, and I shared that with them the other day. I said, you guys need to do the mundane things, like get to school on time. It's not like it's a problem for them, but
yeah.
I contend if people just show up every day to whatever you do, even when you're not feeling quite right, get there on time, and then just do the best you can. That to me is grindability, the ability to do it day after day after day after day after day. And that starts for an athlete when they got to go to practice. As simple as that. Oh, we got practice again. Oh, another practice, another practice, another practice. That routine of having to grind is so valuable, whether you have a good coach or not. Now, you combine that grindability with a coach who really cultivates the good things, promotes the kids who are really laying it on the line and encourages the ones that aren't there yet. It's a beautiful environment. And I always say to coaches at clinics, when you are called coach, be thankful, because it's a noble profession. And it's hard. It's a hard profession.
It is. It hurts me deeply that it is a profession that people are shying away from, and a profession that people are leaving in droves.
Yeah.
And especially at the high school level. I understand that it doesn't make as much money. I understand that culture has changed, and I understand that parents are hard to deal with at times, but just the value in it, the honor in it, and the nobility of doing it is and what it's worth. It's worth all of that to me. And yeah, I try to promote that on this podcast, that this is I don't think there is a profession like it with just the respect you can get and what you can teach kids. And
I would like to say to your audience, if you don't be afraid in the privacy of a walk between the football field and the car, to just go say to the coach, you know what, I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks for taking the time. You may think your kid should be playing more. You may not have liked that the coach may have barked at him one time or two times, but they're investing a lot in your child. And I know I just finished my 39th year as a college coach. Once in a while, when a mom or a dad or or a player says, "Coach, thanks for doing what you're doing," that means more to me than the paycheck.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me, because there's some value in sport that you don't find in many other areas.
Well, and I'll add on to that, Coach. The thing about gratitude, when you're talking about reaching out to a coach and saying thank you for the little things like that, one of the things I tell people, it's one of the first things I work with athletes is practicing some gratitude and practicing and finding those positives in little things. And what I've found out about gratitude, and this is something I've learned later in my life, is that giving gratitude to someone does more for the giver than it does the receiver. So As much as you enjoy somebody saying thank you, it actually does more for the person that's saying thank you. It's the most selfish thing we can do in life is to give gratitude to others. And if you have never practiced that feels like that's so counterintuitive, and there's no way that makes sense. But I'm telling you, the more you practice gratitude, and this is for the parents, for the players, all that, the more you practice gratitude, the more you're going to start to notice the positives in your life, the things that people are doing for you. And you're going to start looking for those. You're going to lean into those, and you're going to be just a better person all the way around.
No question. And it's a great segue to one of the other pillars that we have in our program, which is thankfulness. And again, as I said earlier, Tony does a great job no matter the circumstance. He says it all the time. Be thankful no matter the circumstance. So just as a quick example, we played at Memphis this year and got hammered. We got toasted. And in the locker room afterwards, I'm thinking, oh, what's he going to say? This is he said, "Gentlemen, look at me right now." He says, "I want you to be thankful for this butt whooping we just took." And they're like, "What?" This is going to help us. The humility that you feel right now, the desire to get back on the court. And he's right. There's always a way, not just in sport, but there's always a place to be thankful and show gratitude no matter the circumstance.
I'm with you, and it's one of these things. So well, first of all, I love that we did not plan any of this. All these things I'm bringing up, you're talking about, I'm just hitting your pillars. I couldn't. I love it, but that's just the point. Is that the things that you guys are doing at Virginia and the stuff that I'm working on with positive psychology? It's not rocket science. It's like a lot of people have developed these ideas. The thing is, people don't want to lean into it because it does take a little bit of work. And honestly, if you've never practiced humility and if you've never practiced gratitude, you don't understand until you feel it, until you see it. You don't understand the benefits. And you think it's all just mumbo jumbo woo woo stuff. And it's like they're just trying to say this to make it easier for them. And that's
Right.
just not the case. It is leaning into the positives it's such a better way to live and play.
Yeah, amen. I I don't mean to share too much of my past, but I did suffer from some depression and some anxiety issues, which I think a lot of people do. The more that I share it with people, they go, "I've been through that too," and 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 just by what you just said, if you anytime you give thanks for something or you show gratitude to another person, what you're doing is reaching out away from yourself. And I think when I was in my worst state, it was all about me. It was like, oh man, this is this is hard. This is rough. This is intense. Whereas when you start reaching out, you go, oh, it's a release almost, and a way to just get your mind right.
Well, Coach, I think you're right on the money on a lot of things, and I think that a lot of people think, oh, it's just me. And if I can speak freely, a lot of guys, especially guys who played sports, right? They're gonna, when we experience those things, some anxiety, depression, I think our natural inclination, guys growing up in the Midwest, and it's, this, I'm not supposed to feel like that, so I'm gonna hide it, and I'm not gonna do anything with it. Yeah, amen. On it, this is weird, and I told you this before. Like, I had to have a stroke, man, to be able to. And that's one of those things to me that was a blessing in disguise, because I don't think I never would have addressed these issues that really, they really came up once I had a stroke, but they were always there, right? I never dealt with them, and now I know how to deal with them. So it's one of these weird things that it's one of the best things that happened to me.
Yeah.
But not everybody gets to have this this watershed light bulb moment to change their life, but you can.
I think the advice that I like to give athletes, in a time when I think because of social media, they're under more duress than we were back in the day. Probably the worst we got was a fan that would say something derogatory to us. But what I like to tell kids, and I especially tell my grandchildren, is that have fun. The first thing they should do when they go out on the baseball field or the court or whatever, just enjoy it. Don't let it consume you. It's easy to say because I was a violator, but if you're not, and I think parents need to understand this. If your children aren't enjoying the game they're playing, then what are they doing? It's not worth it. And I think that's a very important thing. Just have fun. Just enjoy it.
I agree. I'm going to add a disclaimer, though, because a lot of people think that the only way that you're going to have fun is by winning, right? So when we talk about having fun, you have to, I think there's a disclaimer in there and one of the things I work with athletes is we have to define what you enjoy to do, right? So when you're talking about grindability and you're talking about showing up every day and doing the work, the trick is to learn to love that. Right. It's not, if you're only going to focus on the wins and that's the only way you have fun, you're going to be disappointed a lot. Right. Exactly. So I think you have to find a way to have fun in the moment and have fun in competing. Right. Yep. And that's a trick. Yep. Right.
It's hard. I don't know that I have really good answers, because even now at 62 years old on game day, I want to win that game, and losing the game is not fun. But the point is to just try to laugh a little, joke a little. Don't be afraid to have fun on the court. Lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm not talking like I have all the answers and you're a lot more accomplished than I am. And even you're saying you don't have the answers. And I know that. I can tell you that I can tell what for winning. I don't know what the formula for winning is, but I know it's not just focusing on winning.
Right.
And so it's somewhere in there.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like you're going to have a better performance if you're not always so intent on every little detail. I'll tell you a quick story. I love to play golf. It literally is my favorite sport, though I've been a coach of basketball for so long. But I used to be a club slamming, hit the bag, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was a young coach, I was out on the course with a friend of mine, and he said, hey, they call me Sody. Hey, Sody, try something. I said, if I can give you a technique to help you score lower, have lower scores on the golf course, would you accept it? And I said, absolutely. He said, just for one round of 18, every time you feel the urge to throw a club or whatever, and I was bad at it, he said, just whistle lightly under your breath, it's like you hook a ball into the woods or whatever. Just don't react. Just whistle a little. And he said, if that doesn't work, go back to throwing your clubs, whatever. But it worked. And I just calmed down a little bit, and I was still upset, but the results were better. It was crazy.
And that's a great technique there. And a couple questions. So this is you're really getting into my field of expertise and what I work on. So when you first did it, so the first time you slice one into the woods, and your inclination was to throw a club, which, hey, I'm in that club, I'm in that group too. And you decided to whistle. How strange did that feel to you to do it that way?
Very strange. I was like, what am I doing? If someone sees me, they think I'm a loon.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the hardest parts I have when working with athletes, because what we're doing, the stuff I do, work with athletes and changing their mindset, is we're actually changing neural pathways, right? So you have a negative stimulus and your response is to throw a club and get upset, right? Just as no different than when you see a player that misses a shot and drop their head or drop their hand or put their hands up, or they think they get fouled or something like that, right? It's the same thing. They have a negative response, a negative stimulus, and a negative pathway. And we're trying to take that athlete and say, okay, I missed that shot. I don't want you to have a negative response. I want you to have a positive response, as in, I've practiced. I know I'll make the next one, right?
There you go.
And that's what we're trying to do. But one of the things that I always tell them is it's going to feel fake at first, because it is fake at first.
Right.
But you have to practice it. And I think that's where I lose a lot of people, because it's going to feel weird to change that.
If the thing that made me really interested in using the technique that my friend asked me to use is he started by saying, Sody, if I told you would shoot a better scores per 18, would you be interested? And I didn't know what he was going to suggest. I thought maybe he'd tell me to, take a step back in my stance or something. I don't know. Yeah. But he said, when you get angry, just whistle. Don't throw anything. And he says, I promise you, your scores are going to get lower. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I tried it, and he was right. And that's crazy.
Yeah. And so there you go. We're leaning back into that humility again, right? Like you had to be like humble enough to be like, and to actually trust somebody and say, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens. Yeah. And then,
Mental Mettle Coaching is driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that will allow athletes and coaches to grow, play, and live in a positive way. We offer a range of coaching and professional development services. First and foremost, we offer individual mental coaching for athletes, and it's easily the most efficient and effective way to help athletes replace fear and anxiety with positivity and confidence. Mental Mettle Coaching has helped middle school setters to high school lacrosse middies to D1 offensive linemen. If you have an athlete that needs to improve their mindset in athletics, mental coaching is the answer. We also offer team coaching, which uses the same concepts as individual mental coaching, but applies them in a group setting. Team bonding outings are great, but they do nothing to address the thoughts and feelings that can derail a team. Team coaching does address that, and it's a great option for helping your team grow. Finally, Mental Mettle Coaching offers social, emotional learning, professional development programs for educators and coaches. There are self-paced online programs, there are virtual coaching options, and even in-person seminars available. This PD will help increase the mental health of your staff and eventually your student athletes and the culture of your school. All of the Mettle coaching programs have the same goal. Our mission is to help athletes and coaches develop a resilient and spirited mindset that will help them confidently face any obstacles or challenges they seek, regardless of their situation. If you would like to see the same in your athlete, your team, and your staff, contact Coach Thomann for more information. So,
and I think it's harder for guys in our generation because, like, my dad was my high school basketball and football coach. Well, his favorite person in the world was Vince Lombardi, and if you grew up looking at Vince Lombardi, your idea of success and how to have success is all, fire and brimstone.
So when you're talking about guys like Vince Lombardi and stuff like that, I don't know how to, sometimes I don't know how to reconcile some of that old fire and brimstone stuff with today's athlete. I know a lot of it doesn't work anymore. And I think that a lot of coaches, and here you go. So we're going to go full circle here, Coach. That I think that's one of the reasons that we see a lot of coaches leaving the profession is because they grew up that way, thinking that's how coaching had to be. And when kids and parents don't, respect their 100% authority, I'm always right, they can't deal with it.
Right.
And they're like, if they're not going to listen to me, like chapter and verse, then what are we doing? And It's not, I don't think it's like that anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that was a big adjustment for me as I grew as a coach. I mean, when I first started, when I was 25, I wouldn't have wanted to been coached by me. And what I've learned is, I think the key if I'm speaking to the coaches out there who are struggling with this, what worked for me was the first team meeting we had at the beginning of every year. I would say, these are the things I expect from you. And I want to say it when I'm calm, and I want to say it when I'm in my right mind. Yeah. I expect you to arrive on time to whatever we do. Don't, as an example, punctuality matters to me. And I expect you to be punctual. That's part of being on this team. And there was a small list, but I wanted them to know what I expected. I expected them to have maximum effort, in whatever we were doing, those types of things. And that helped me so that instead of just going ballistic on a kid, if I thought I'd say, Mike, you agreed to follow the few expectations we have. Right now, you're not doing that. And that helped me to bridge the gap from the Vince Lombardi to the today's coach. And it was an adjustment for me, that's for sure.
I agree. I think as a coach, you have to have your standards and your non-negotiables. And I think that if you're not communicating those, you're setting yourself up.
Yes.
I think so long as I don't know, some of your non-negotiables, I think some of the old non-negotiables were maybe not fair to kids.
Like so you just have to have your hair cut a certain way.
Yeah.
No facial hair. I mean, what?
Yeah. Right. And so I think as a coach, you have to know what your core values are and what your non-negotiables are, and make sure that those are just and fair. And
absolutely.
And yeah, I think that's a better way to do it, no doubt. And I love the idea of, and because I know that you played for you. I mean, you've got this lineage too. You played for your dad in high school, and then of course you coached your son in college, right?
Yeah, at Lindenwood, right?
At Lindenwood.
And Dick Bennett was no, wimpified violent.
Oh.
He got after it too. So,
yeah.
Those are the guys I learned from. So
yeah. As I said earlier, I love the idea of the family tree and the lineage and what we take from the past and what we move to the future. And I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that you picked up that you instill into your son as he's coaching now at Millikan, which is just, I love that idea.
Well, he's much more calm on the sideline than I was, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not proud of the way most of my career that I was. I was very volatile on the court. I loved my players to death, but I just had a different way of dealing with, adversity on the court and with officials and bad calls and bad assignments and all that kind of stuff. But the funny thing is, and again, for coaches who are out there, the key is to adjust because, I've been in this for 39 years, but the players I coached have always been 17 to 21. That stayed the same. So when I first started, I was one of them. Well, now I could be their grandfather. And if I'm the one that needs to do the adjusting, they don't have to adjust to me, so I think that's a challenge for coaches who are, getting closer and closer to the retirement years. You have to adjust, and you've got to be alert enough to understand how these young people, the culture that they've been raised in, and it's just different. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah, we're talking about things here that a coach needs to be are humble and flexible, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That is not when you look at somebody like Vince Lombardi, that is not the words you would describe him. And
I'll give you a perfect example that is true today, right now. For a college coach who's been in the business a long time, to have a young man come in who's 17 years old, has yet to make a basket on a college basketball court, going through the recruiting process and hearing all the sales pitch, and then saying, "But coach, how much will I get paid?"
Yeah.
That's an adjustment. Whereas in the past you'd say, "Okay, son, you're going to have to earn your minutes." Well, forget the minutes. They want to know how much money they're getting. It's hard. That's a hard adjustment for an old school guy. So
no doubt. And the thing is, it is the landscape, and I don't think it changes the fact of what a coach is put there to do. And
correct.
what the impact that has. So, and that's the hard part for a coach to be able to do that. But I think that it's still worth it because they probably need the guidance more than ever.
Absolutely. And and what makes the two worlds collide is that and even down to the high school levels now, coaches are expected to win games.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting and a talk we could have forever because the landscape has clearly changed, and I'm a little sad because where I see it, there's amateur athletics at the Division I level no longer exists because an amateur is a player who plays without financial reimbursement, and that's not happening anymore.
No,
it's okay, but it's a little sad. So
it is, and I don't know, but there you go. It's the landscape. It's not going to go back. The toothpaste is out of the tube. We're not going to do much about it. So, so I think to find the positive in it is basically all we can do, as rough as that is sometimes.
Exactly.
Coach, it's been a phenomenal conversation. I'm going to ask you the last question I ask every guest, and that is, what did I not ask you that I should have?
Wow. Well, this may be a weird thing, but I am a man of God. I'm not afraid to say so. And I think that our world is a little upside down right now. And the sooner everybody returns to their maker in one way, in their way, however they choose to do it, things will get much better.
Yeah. I think that it's something that it's missing. I agree. It's not the focus of my podcast here, but it's I love to lean into it whenever I want, when a guest wants to, and that's how I feel about it. I think that all these things that I can talk about with humility and gratitude, and so those things, I can find every example of those when I read my Bible and get word from God on this. This is all from the man upstairs that's telling me how to do this stuff as well, and then that really helps me. And yeah, I agree.
I have a lot of opportunities at the University of Virginia to speak to the students about my faith, and I always just share one thing, and I'll share this with your audience: with all of your might, try to remain in the presence of Christ if you so
Mhm.
are a Christian believer, and everything else will be fine. Just find a way. And I'm not telling you how to find that way. Every person has to draw that relationship however they want. But once you do that, in my opinion, things just seem to go more smoothly.
No, I agree. He made us all different. We all have different abilities. We all have different values. But I agree is using those in the right way. Like I say,
Yeah.
like you say, in the presence of Christ, in the right way is.
That's it.
But that's the trick, right? It's not it's finding that, right? And
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of effort and practice and experience to be able to do that.
Yep. We all try to control too much, and just let him
Amen.
let him work.
Yeah. Yep. Let him work. So, Coach, it's been a phenomenal conversation. I can't thank you for coming on, and best of luck to you coming up this year. And yeah.
Thank you. Let's do this again sometime.
Whoa, I'd love to. It was
right.
a great conversation. Thanks, Coach.
Have a great day.
Yep.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle.
So, grindability. I love the term. I love made up words. It's kind of a made up word. Like when you say grindability, you know exactly what he means. You're talking about grit. You're putting in time. You're putting in effort. You're like keeping your nose to the grindstone, all those things. So you know where he's coming from. But when you give a word like that, create a word like grindability, I think it gives you a focus. It gives you an intentional phrase that is a meaning that is important to you. And I think that anytime you can do something like that, it's on your mind more, right? So when he's telling kids you need to have grindability, he's telling them they need to show up on time, put the work in, and have fun doing it. Like we talked about those things. Having that word makes it more memorable, something you can anchor to, something you can remember. And I really enjoy that. And having that be something that is a focus of his is really important, even though he's doing it, he's he's at Virginia, right? And I think that's anytime I get a coach on that has, he's 39 years in the business and he's coached at St. Louis. He's been an assistant he's been a head at St. Louis, head at Lindenwood, which is now Division I. He was an assistant under Dick Bennett at Wisconsin, and he's been all over and coached with a lot of guys. So it definitely lends to some credibility to the conversation. But what I've been finding is they talk about the same things as good coaches at the high school and lower college and even junior high level. It's the same things. They're focusing on the same kind of things. And it's not, more often than not, it's not focusing on the X's and O's. Yes, you have to have X's and O's for your sport, basketball especially. You've got to have X's and O's. You got to have something that you're doing that your kids know how to do. Agreed, no doubt, not up for debate. You have to do that. But you have to have things beyond that are your focus. And I think one of the biggest points that I picked up there, he was talking about being in the film room in Virginia. So they're after a game, they're in the film room talking about what they need to do better, what they need to work on. And there's just as much or more emphasis put on values and their pillars than there, just as much time or more there than there is with the X's and O's and what they did right, what they did wrong as far as, defensive closeouts or taking the right shot or making the right pass. It's just as much focusing on those values and those ideas that you want your players to stand for. For him, he mentioned too, I didn't really get into the more, but the two of the pillars he talked about was humility and thankfulness. And again, those aren't, it's not lip service for them to do that. I know, as he mentioned, Virginia's struggled a little bit the last few years, but they've got a national championship just a few years ago. This is a top level program, and they're talking about how they spend a lot of their time making sure their kids understand the importance of humility and how you have to be humble in order to grow. And he talks about how they have to have thankfulness in order to grow and to be the people they want to be. It's so refreshing to hear that, to talk to coaches that do that and do that in the right way. And the lesson there is for you as a coach, you have to be doing that sort of thing, regardless of the level. It's just as much, if not more important at your level, yet we really get bogged down in the details and the X's and O's. We really need to be doing more, focusing on what are your pillars, what are your values, what are your non-negotiables, right? So I think that's the first question I would ask you here is, and I don't care what level your program is, right? You could be doing a bunch of kids at a rec program through junior high, through high school, college, whatever. If you are tasked with being the coach, as I meant, and as I said in there, as I really mean, one of the most honorable professions there is, if you are being called coach, I think it's your responsibility to understand, or make sure they understand, and for yourself understand, what are my core values? What do I want to embody? What do I want this team to be about? And I want you to you should spend some time writing those things down so that everybody knows it's not a secret. This is what I'm about. These are my pillars. And then finding ways to communicate those with your players. I believe in humility, thankfulness. Here's my non-negotiables. You have to be on time. You have to play hard. Start writing some of that stuff down. Put words to it and explanation to it. We're beyond the time and place in our culture where the coach was automatically respected and everything they said goes. We're beyond that regardless of what level you're at. So part of the gig is writing down what you're about, what's important to you, what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept, and then being able to explain that. Put some verbiage behind it on why I think this is important, why I want this to be a main focus of our team. And put it out there to your players, put it out there to your parents, put it out there to your assistants, and make sure, regardless of everything else, this is what we're going to do. In all things, we're going to do this. Right? Whatever it is you want it to be, right? And talk to your coaches, your assistants, and figure out what it is you want to be. Don't overload your players and your parents with it, but what are your three main things you're going to focus on? This is what we're going to do. Make sure that this is well communicated and well known. Make sure, and then of course, as you start having practices, as you start having games, look back. And just like you might look and say, how well did we run our offense? How well did we run our defense? How well did we hold up our pillars? How well did we hold up our core values? And do that in some self-reflection as a staff. How did we do? Are we doing this? What can we do better? How can we work on it? If you make those your focus, you're gonna improve those. So have focuses, have goals that you want to focus on, or values that you want to focus on. Put time and effort into making them better, and they're going to get better, right? So it's not I mean, it's not rocket science. As you put the time in and effort into those things, they're going to grow and you get better at it. Like, pay attention. How much time are we spending on these? How well if somebody out of the blue asks one of our players, what is our team about? Can they answer the question? Hey, it's not a secret. Communicate this stuff. It is worth it. You are not, as a coach, you are not raising athletes. You're not raising basketball players, baseball players, volleyball players, football players. You're raising humans, right? So understand that your job is to use athletics to help them be better people in their lives. And that's number one. I think that's something you should use to help you create your core values that you want to embody, that you want to communicate, that you want to talk about, and that you want to increase. So, yeah, and have the grindability to work on those every day. And say, this is what I'm going to work on every day, because it's not easy, right? Yeah, the coaching profession is very noble, and it's something that should be respected, and we need more coaches, but it's not easy. It's worth it. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And I think that's probably a good message there, that you need to remind yourself that you didn't get into coaching because it's easy. You got into it because it's worth it. So just a great conversation with Coach Brad Soderberg of Virginia. I enjoyed him coming on, and I appreciated it. And thank you all for listening, for sharing. By all means, I couldn't keep doing it without you. And as always, this has been Coach Matt Thomann. This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and always remember to forge your metal.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.